Hello, and welcome back to me doing my homework and using it as content because I don't have any time to do anything. So, this particular homework assignment is called 100 Days of Typography, and I have decided that for 100 days, I will draw the letter J in different ways. And I figured, why not start the first day with one of the first known and categorized typefaces, Blackletter. Now, I'm not exactly sure if this is actually officially Blackletter, but it is what came up most often when I searched Blackletter font J. So I'm just rolling with it, you know? But I don't exactly know how I'm going to commentate over this, but I need content. So right now, this is probably one of the easier ones that I was considering doing, just because there was already a very standard looking typeface for it. Already a standard of how the letter is supposed to be shaped, and how the curves and bends and what part of the letter are geometric and square. So there was already a very consistent idea of what this letter is supposed to look like. Not a lot of creative freedom, but a decent warm-up, I suppose, and a good way to get me to think about the different forms that the letter is taking. Overall, I'm pretty happy with this one, how it turned out. It probably would have turned out a little better if I used a program like Illustrator instead of Photoshop, but I'm much more comfortable drawing in Photoshop than in Illustrator. My second idea was to draw the letter out of flowers. And at this point, I was thinking 100 days is a lot of days. And I'm putting a lot of effort into these. And I'm going to run out of prompts. 100 of anything is a lot. So, if you have any suggestions for possible themes, possible topics that I would be, making into letters, please leave them down below. I could always use them. But as for this one, I wanted to do something a lot more illustrative after having to do something so restrained as the Blackletter. So I really wanted something organic, which is why I picked flowers, something really naturalistic. And I was having fun with just drawing these flowers. I'm not sure what kind they are. I don't know anything about flowers. I mean, I've proven this before. But the main thing I wanted to do with the next two that I do in this video, I do two more. The main thing I wanted to do with this is I didn't want there to be an outline. I wanted it to be very clearly the letter J without having to specifically outline the letter J. I also didn't do this one in color, and I initially planned on doing it in color, but I chose not to because the line art took me so long and I have to do 100 of these. So I didn't do color with this one, but I did do color on the last one. So that'll just be a product of how much time I have for each of these. I also copied and pasted my sketch a couple times, which could be considered a crime in some countries. No, I mean, when you're trying to get something done this quickly, when I need to do 100 of these, taking shortcuts like copying and pasting different parts of the drawing is not a bad thing, and it's not something anybody should be ashamed of doing. Just because you don't have to slave and suffer over a specific part of your art doesn't mean it's not art. So finding shortcuts, finding things that still look good, still look varied, still look the way you want them to, in an easy way, that's totally fine. And that's something I know a lot of artists struggle with. And a lot of people outside of art or whatever you like to do will sometimes look down on you because they think that, oh, you're not a real artist if you do this and this and this. But the thing is, a lot of traditional artists don't mix their own paint. They don't make their own brushes. They don't press their own paper or stretch their own canvas. So a digital artist using the tools available to them is not an inherently bad thing. It's a good thing. These tools are here for a reason, and it's good that they're being used. So anybody that would tell an artist, tell you, tell me, that I'm cheaping out because I'm copying and pasting certain parts of my illustration is being ridiculous. And that's what I have to say about that. I mean, it's silly. People shouldn't expect you to not use the tools at your disposal because you should suffer for your art. Preachiness aside, I'm done with that whole spiel. The thing I really wanted to do with these flowers was make them look like flowers in the most efficient way possible. And to me, that included these little like lines. I looked up a couple of reference images of flowers, and I was seeing like how some people added texture, because I didn't want to have to go in and add texture using like a lot of painterly stuff and a lot of shading. I just wanted it to look good as is. So I have a lot of these like little tiny texture lines, and even on the leaves I have like some diagonal lines going, just to make it a little bit more visually interesting, make it look a little bit more like a completed illustration without having to add any color into it. So that was what I did for that. And then of course just like adding leaves here and there sticking out of the boundary of that J to make it seem a little bit more organic as well. And this is about where I'm done with the second one. And I had no ideas for the third one, so I took a little while to do a brainstorm sesh, and I came up with prompt word 3, fire. So I thought that would be an interesting way to try and figure out how fire worked dynamically, and also try and make it look like it's in the shape of a J. I wanted it to look like I wasn't trying to make it in the shape of a J, that this fire just so happened to be in the shape. So obviously I looked up how to draw fire, and it seemed like, you know, having these both rounded and pointed edges was an important part of drawing a fire, and also having like different pieces coming off and having different densities within the fire. Again, I wasn't trying to make it look extremely realistic because I didn't want to spend hours and hours and hours on it. I also didn't want a heavy black line around the edges, so I used a yellow as the line art, and I used some gradients as well to really sell the idea of the fire transitioning from color to color. And that was something I had to look up some references for, is like how does fire change color, because initially I thought it was darker at the bottom and lighter at the top, but that's not how fire works, you know. Fire is darkest at the furthest point away, and it burns hotter as it gets closer to the ground. I was also drawing in the wrong layer for part of that, as I always do, but I eventually get my stuff together. So this one wasn't as labor intensive as the second one, but it had a bit more creative freedom than the first, so it was a bit more of a middle ground. I really wanted to make it look like this fire was glowing, and I wasn't sure how to do that. So initially I did some like layer styles over top of it. It just wasn't blending the way I wanted it to. So I did some inner and outer glow using some blending modes on the layers, and that still wasn't quite enough. So I don't really remember what layer style I ended up using to make the red look like it's glowing. I think it was either a hard light or a vivid light layer. And that looked fantastic. That was exactly what I wanted from the fire. And with that, I am basically done with this one, just trying to get it to look like it's really glowing, really fiery. And I think it turned out really well. I think it looks organic, but still definitely in the shape of a J. So again, if you have any ideas for themes I could do for my 100 Days of J, let me know. I will not be speed drawing all of them, but I will be speed drawing some of them, and I will also be doing a display at the end of my 100 days. So thank you so much for watching, and I hope you have a lovely day and all that jazz.